Hello and welcome to Grinding Meaning number 45. Excuse me. Oh, that's a great way to start it. Mask mandates and sadism. This might seem a bit hyperbolic, but I think by the time I get to the end, you will maybe agree. Today, August 25th, 2022. I am required to wear a mask at work. You might think maybe you're in a medical field. Or maybe you deal with the public in an area where there's a high density of people. Maybe I work at a theater or something where there's a large crowd. No. I work in an area large enough to fit a couple football fields into. It is shared by about 100 people. And there is no local, state, or federal mandate or any government agency recommending one, or recommending masks. It has been an interesting week as the dominoes kind of start to fall. In that, I'm going to be doing my best to avoid actually referencing the virus that cannot be named. I would prefer to avoid one of those little misinformation banners below my video and the algorithmic throttling that seems to come with that. Not that anybody watches these streams anyway, but, you know, maybe. Maybe. Well, let's go to the sadism part. Sadism, the tendency to derive pleasure from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others. Seems hyperbolic. I will come back to this. I would say that it manifests in a spectrum. We tend to only look at the most extreme example of a thing and then treat that as its own thing, separate from everyone else. But there's a lot of ways to reinforce your status. If you're feeling insecure, your ability to make others uncomfortable, waste their time, or even make them suffer, gives you the feeling of status. And these things go hand in hand. Some people want the status because they want to make other people suffer, and other people will work it the other way. And when environments get toxic enough, the way to signal to the toxic majority is if you make other people suffer, that will actually raise your status. It's very complicated. What I will say is the CDC's original position on masks was correct. They said that it offers little or no benefit to have the population masked. Shortly after that, they did a complete 180 and said that this is so important. It's important, and so important, in fact, that we need to require, not by laws passed by elected representatives, but through executive action from powers they essentially granted themselves. And agencies that didn't actually have the power to do it decided to do it, or at least recommend it. To say there was a conspiracy to oppress a population is not accurate. A conspiracy requires conspirators, people who coordinate their efforts for a common goal. While there may have been some coordination in some aspects of it, there were a number of, drives and motives of a number of different people and organizations pretty much acting in their own interests, but all pushing in the same direction. And that feels like a conspiracy. But it really, not by the definition we know, where the people are actively coordinating with each other. I think a good example of this phenomenon would be 9/11. For a lot of people, it seems very likely that there was some conspiracy involved in how that happened to go down. What makes a lot more sense is there were a lot of individuals acting in their own interest and collectively dropping the ball. I would say the vast majority weren't even conscious, even though they took actions, or more accurately, failed to take actions that produced a result that they would individually benefit from. But when most of the conspirators are not actually coordinating with each other, and probably most of them weren't, their participation wasn't even conscious, and it wasn't something that was done, it was something that wasn't done. This is something I've studied extensively in the game of Rocket League, where most of the toxicity, once they ban it in chat, it's not leaving. It's still going to be there. It's going to manifest in a different way. And it typically manifests in people failing to do things, not overtly making things happen. And there's just some part of human nature that if you want to unify, to coalesce humans into a particular camp, or get them to do something or not do something, they need things to gather around, or they need things to rally against. And if you can get both of them, you can get a lot of people on the same page. Typically, this is like if you are attacked by a foreign country, it will unify the population in a way that nothing else can. I was around after 9/11, and I was actually working at a newspaper at the time, and it was amazing how different everybody was for a few days. I mean, it kind of faded off a little over time, but man, I just remember like I was on the top of like the highest point in like basically the county on a farmhouse, and I'd love going out and looking at the stars. And I was basically in line between a major, there was a couple major U.S. flight hubs near. And I used to just go out and, you could see the planes. Because of the location, I can see for like hundreds of miles. So I was very familiar with the, I could see the planes in a holding pattern over major airport, over actually two different major airports. And going outside and just seeing no planes in the sky on a super clear night was really weird. Okay, that's kind of an aside. As far as the unifying the new pseudo-religious movement around, we're just really talking about the masks. Once the narrative was established, people are always looking for a way to show that they are a good person, and they really need something to separate them from the bad person. This could be armbands or berets or something attached to your lapel or a certain type of clothes or a certain haircut, that you show you're part of the good people. And masks were a way to do that. Then you saw, as soon as it became available, like instantly, tons of videos of people sorry, don't want to get bumped out of the game. Immediately going after other people. Somebody in their front yard, standing on their front porch, nobody else around, and then somebody across the street from their porch yelling at the person across the street to put their mask on. They had their way of being better than other people, and better than that, now you can attack other people. There's plenty of videos of there are compilations of maskless people yelling at other people to wear their masks. Very telling. They say you can't judge something by the extremists, but I think the extremist types are just a less subtle part of the, I should say, movement or pseudo-religion. The other way you tell that it's very much like a religion is the purging of dissenters, or in this case, as best they could be. That people, and I'm, even though it can be applied to a lot of other things, I'm really just talking about the masks. And I don't seem to have gotten any messages from YouTube yet, so maybe I'm okay. I might not be on the right screen. No, I think I'm okay. I guess we'll find out if the little misinformation thing pops up on the video after I'm done. I'm just checking on something really quicker. Oh. And it's just, there was no booking, there was no reason. Okay, I will say something in defense of masks, as I would like to be fair, and there is an element of truth to them. It's the same reason why surgeons need to wear masks. It's not something people like to think about a whole lot. Everyone spits when they talk. Every T, every V, every TH, you know, pretty much anything that would make a pop sound in the mic. You are sending out a little spray when you talk. And even though it appears that asymptomatic people can't transmit, some people are just feel like crap all the time, horrible diet, just unhealthy people. So they could actually be experiencing symptoms, but it doesn't rise above the background noise of how awful they feel all the time. So people will be walking around in a state where they could transmit, and basically in normal human interactions, I know it's not pleasant to think, we're basically spitting in other people's mouths and eyes all the time. It's just that the size of the projectiles is too small to notice. I'm thinking about a technician where I worked had come over from England, and he had this really bad combination of personal traits. He was a close talker who spit when he talked. And you're just like dodging and wincing. And it's like he had no idea. Now I wonder if he actually did know and he was just kind of a dick. But at the time, it was baffling. He had this like thick Liverpool accent. Like it was another diversion. But the point is, the dam couldn't hold forever on something that wasn't reasonable. And this has been a very big week. In fact, the CDC, from what I understand, changed its guidance on recommendations. And as I understand it, the best study they have to cite showed and this is a little game that gets played, the difference between relative and absolute difference. So if you study a population and you have you have two groups and one of them wears masks and the transmission rate is 10%. And then you have another group that doesn't wear masks and their transmission rate is 11%. You can basically say it's 10% effective. Relative. when in actuality, the actual difference is only 1%. And that 1% falls well within the margin of error. So you have a non-result, and that seems to be the best the CDC has to offer as far as supporting the idea that mandates have a measurable impact as far as reducing transmission. One of the, I don't know if that was last week or if that was Monday. It was very recent. And then either Monday or Tuesday, UCLA and what was the other one? USC. I seem to have released on the same day studies concluding that the mask mandates had no significant impact on transmission in California. Safety in numbers. And the reason I am even talking about this today is because this week also, in YouTube's we'll say medical misinformation policy, all references to masks were scrubbed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about this right now. And I guess I'll find out if that is the case, because I don't think I've mentioned anything about the the virus that cannot be named. And yet, today, August 25th, 2022, I'm still wearing a mask at work. Now, you might think maybe that's something that businesses are doing in this area. No. To my knowledge, no other businesses anywhere near us are doing this, even those that interact with the public. And when this thing first started, they had a ton of procedures. They installed, plastic dividers everywhere. They had temperature monitors. You had to sign something every day, affirming that you did not have anything resembling symptoms, you did not have contact with anybody, the whole deal. And they were very, very strict about it. They were like twice a day going through and like cleaning, or at least, spraying down with disinfectant, like basically everything people came into physical contact with, which also turned out not to be a vector, but that's that's another video. A lot of these things kind of faded a little bit. And then when my state dropped the mandate and basically every business dropped the masks, a little bit slower than everybody else, they dropped them. And that was at shortly after the beginning of the year. And was it 2 or 3 months ago? No, it was like 2 months ago. Ironically, coinciding with the announcement of an incoming heat wave, they decided the mask got to go back on. And it was completely baffling. There was no justification whatsoever. And then as soon as the heat wave abated, like, a week and a half, 2 weeks later, they dropped them again. And we're like, okay, I don't know what the hell that was, but we'll just keep going. And then they did a most curious thing. They essentially allowed for the self-reporting of an infection. And anyone who did got a week off. As you might imagine, knowing anything about human nature, many took them up on the week off. I even heard some referring it to as a virus that cannot be named, vacation. And then the company says, look at all these infections. We're dealing with a crisis here. Masks go back on. And that was over a month ago, and we are still wearing them. Now, and I mean every other thing they did in response to, the situation, from the beginning, every other thing has been dropped. They're not doing anything else. Only masks. And the odd coinciding of the last time they brought them back with the heat wave, at the beginning of the heat wave, and dropping them at the end, it is, my opinion, if I was being very, very, very generous, I would call it pseudoscientific corporate virtue signaling. But in reality, it's simply a sadistic display of power. I'll come back to this. Sadism, the tendency to derive pleasure from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others. They're not doing it to protect people. They are in no danger of any kind of legal action, lawsuit or anything being taken against them. They have dropped everything else that they did to, keep us safe. And they are only caring about the masks, and they're doing it without being recommended to by any legitimate government agency. This is about making us suffer. And I'm hoping, now that the dominoes are falling as far as the authorities on this, that we can go back to breathing normally. I'm the Expert Layman. You all have a great day.